But then some expert got the idea that they should teach reading with whole language and look-see and leave phonics. And 25 years later, some states, after they gave it up, they decided they were wrong. And millions of children had been crippled and harmed. Well, I ask you today whether or not 25 years from now, somebody will look back and say we were wrong using the results of high state standardized tests to evaluate our students. It will be too late then. It will be too late then. And so I ask this question today of educators. Because a student can score high on a standardized test, because a student is a computer expert, that student cannot spell, cannot write, cannot count, and cannot speak a grammatically correct sentence. Is that student educated? Is that really education? Or one of the things that we've got to do, and somebody has got to stand up and do it, and it won't be the posturing, pontificating, picture-taking politicians. It won't be the non-educators making educational decisions for non-educational purposes. It will be the educators, because you are still there. And because you are still there, you do care. That's why I opened this with Marvin Gaye's, "Who really cares?" And it can't be the money, can't be the respect, can't be the valuing. You do it because you know if you don't do it for the children, no one else will. And so day in and day out, you must continue to go into these schools, teach these children. I read USA Today yesterday. I don't know whether you saw the article. But what they are doing now is finding a silver lining in the financial crisis. Do you know who's going to benefit? Public schools. Do you know how you're going to benefit? Because these stockbrokers and these persons and bankers who killed and destroyed Wall Street are now going to favor your schools with their talents. Oh yes, they are. They are bringing them into the public schools saying that you have a whiz on math who can teach math. That you got a whiz that can come in and teach because they now no longer have a job. One person said, "Oh, I wish I had gone into teaching economics in high school instead of Wall Street." They're bringing them and dumping them into the schools just as they've always done. Let me say this to Wall Street and Back Street and all of these other streets. Just because you know math doesn't mean you can teach it to a high school class. Just because you know it. They are not requiring them to have child development so they can understand children. My wife hired a physicist to teach physical science. He couldn't control the classroom. Oh, he knew physics. She hired a lawyer to teach political science. Couldn't control the student. Didn't know how to relate. Oh, but Wall Street is coming to public education. And if you don't stand up and stop it, they're going to dump them and make you think that they're doing you a favor. Well, some of you asked me today about the okey-doke. Well, that is a classic example of the okey-doke. And what is the okey-doke? A thing or promise given as if it has great value, when in fact it is useless. Always designed to deceive. Given mostly but not always by posturing, pontificating, and picture-taking politicians. So I say to you, CEA, don't go for the okey-doke. Don't let them dump these so-called experts in mathematics and banking and accounting in our public schools to further cripple our children. You are the teachers. Day in and day out, you must continue to go into these schools. You must teach these children. If you don't, no one else will. Let the lawyers lawyer and the doctors doctor and the preachers preach. But teachers, you must teach and teach and teach. Oh, but be careful about what you teach. I don't like labels. Why should you tell a child that he or she is at risk? Why should you use a label of poverty to say a child can't learn? Why should you tell a school it's a failing school? Why should you use labels on these children and these institutions? Why should you tell one teacher you're a golden apple and the other teacher you're no good? Why is that? That has nothing to do with education. It has nothing to do with educating our children. From my personal experience, I had graduated from high school, graduated from college, graduated from law school, passed the bar examination the first time, and was working on the solicitor staff of the Department of Labor in Washington, D.C. before I found out that I was disadvantaged. Over day in and day out, you must go into these schools and teach these children, because if you don't, no one else will. We're at war for our children's minds. There are those who teach our children that it's more important to go to jail than it is to go to college. There are those who teach our children that to get street cred, you need to be shot. There are those who are teaching our children that under the guise of making hits and making money, it's all right to call your sister a B or your mama an H. They are wrong. Parents are the first teachers, but not necessarily always the best teachers, because money is America's God. America's God is money. Some parents will teach their daughters to wiggle before they teach them to write, and teach their sons to rap before they teach them to read. You don't do it day in and day out, no one else will. Everything about education shows how critical and important it is. But then why isn't it at the top of the agenda? Why isn't it not at the top of the agenda in America? Why is there no candidate, whether it was in the primaries or whether it was in this general election, who is the education candidate? Not a single candidate made education number one. Yet it's been shown that the more education you have, the longer you live. The more education you have when you get older, the better your memory. The more education you have, the more legitimate money you can make. The more education you have, the better your sex life. Well, I made the last one up. But I